Many Nigerians at least know that the country called Nigeria today was formed from an amalgamation of southern protectorates and northern protectorates in Nigeria, that it was an amalgamation of north and south. But how many people actually know who this Lord Lugard was? The same Royal Niger Company that was attacked by King Koko of Brass because the people of Brass were starving. The chief security officer of the Royal Niger Company was this Lord Lugard, who was then employed as the first governor of Nigeria. And he amalgamated north and south. The amalgamation was nothing more than an accounting entry. There were surpluses in the south in terms of revenues, and there were deficits in the north. And so amalgamating north and south made for a more economic entity, a more sustainable entity. And so this governor now presided over this one entity. But by the 1930s and 1940s, many Nigerians had acquired a Western education, especially some of the people from southern Nigeria. And they started nationalist movements who wanted to see Nigerians in charge of Nigerian resources. And this is what led to the rise of the local elites in Nigeria. The whole issue of revenue allocation then started to come to the fore. What do we do with the resources? Remember that the British experiment in Nigeria was about the extraction of resources. We talk about the groundnut pyramids in northern Nigeria. But who bought those groundnuts? So all the labor that was being put into it, what do you think it was for? It was to extract the groundnuts and take them by rail all the way down to Lagos, from which they'll be shipped to Europe. That was the whole purpose. So whether it was palm oil in the south-south, it was coal in the southeast, or it was cocoa in the southwest, whatever the resource was, the ultimate aim was extraction, and from extraction, export to Europe via England. That was the whole machinery that was in place. So the elites began to debate how much of this extraction revenues should actually remain and be used locally, at least some of the revenues that were raised. And they started to push for a Nigerian constitution. They wanted revenue allocation to become clear. So various commissions were put in place by the British. In 1946, we had the Philipson Commission that said that 50% of revenues should remain in the zone from which those revenues were raised. 35% should be shared amongst the regions, and 15% could be retained by the central government. And we had other commissions that returned similar things, like the Hicks-Philipson Commission in 1951. In 1953, the Hicks Commission actually came back and said, should 100% of the revenues not be kept by the region from which it was extracted? In 1958, the Ralsman Commission suggested that, well, maybe it should be 50% for the region, 30% to be shared amongst the other regions, and 20% for the central government. The Bean Commission in 1964 suggested that maybe it's 50%, just 50% for the region responsible. But by 1957, there was a petition by the people of the Niger Delta saying that they were marginalized and that they wanted a region of their own. This was not granted to them. Instead, a Henry Willings Commission was set up to look into the matter, and instead of granting them their own region, Instead, he suggested a development commission. It was going to be called the Niger Delta Development Board. Was then put up in 1959. And by 1966, when Isaac Adaka Boro decided that it was time for the Niger Delta people to create their own Republic of the Niger Delta, nothing had worked for the people of that region.